Are you looking to buy a Nintendo Switch 2? I'm going to share what went into my decision, my experience with the pre-order madness, and where you might still be able to get one from. I was trying to figure out how much I wanted or needed to get a Nintendo Switch 2, especially right off the bat. I went from being a certain day one buyer before they had announced anything about it, to seriously questioning it once they revealed the sky-high price for the system and the accessories and the games, because yikes, is it really going to be worth it? As I worked through my decision, I ended up factoring in the following things. I or my family growing up have owned every Nintendo home system, dating back to the NES, so I truly appreciate the video game pioneering effort and quality that Nintendo's become known for. Their IPs. If you want the Nintendo experience of playing Nintendo characters in Nintendo games, then you need Nintendo systems. Also, my wife doesn't do a ton of gaming, but when she does, she typically games on our Nintendo Switch. So if I want her buy-in on this purchase, her interest in it matters. I have young kids. What system and types of games do I want to be playing with them and in front of them in their formative years? It's huge that it's backwards compatible. Unlike when the original Switch system launched with an incredibly lean library, the eShop was pretty bare for a while. The Switch 2 will have a backwards compatible library that will help otherwise bored early adopters to aid them in their gaming backlog carried over from the original Nintendo Switch. I'm also looking forward to the graphical improvements for the future Nintendo games and trying out the mouse functionality of the new Joy-Cons. I also hear that the new Pro Controller isn't being talked about nearly enough and is very underrated. So that's how I worked through the dilemma. I weighed the pros and cons, and the main con honestly was the price. Who are we kidding? And I decided that I was going to go for it. But now the next problem arose. Would I even be able to get one? Like many of you, I read the articles or watched the videos stating how quickly pre-orders had sold out in other countries before they started in mine. Now, I'm up in Canada, and currently we're in the midst of a trade dispute with our neighbors to the south. That caused the planned pre-orders for both countries to be delayed while Nintendo strategized as to whether or not they would further increase their prices to account for potential fallout from the continued trade dispute and its proposed tariffs. In the end, so far at least, when they announced that the pre-orders would resume, they kept the price of the consoles the same as they had previously announced, but increased the prices of some of the accessories. So right before the pre-orders started to open back up, I did what I could to prepare for the pre-order madness. I was at the websites for retailers well ahead of time, and I had checked my account details and made sure that I was signed in. But wow, did this pre-order madness differ heavily across the board. I'm gonna rank my experience from worst to best. Last, I would say, was London Drugs. I had read on my favorite tech blog, shout out to iPhoneincanada.ca, that pre-orders had gone live at London Drugs, so I typed in Nintendo Switch 2 and nothing came up. I reloaded the page several times throughout the day and only items related to the first Switch appeared, but nothing from Switch 2. Eventually, I heard that they were out of stock and I stopped looking there. Pretty disappointing experience overall. Second last, and nearly a tie, was Walmart. This one I knew pretty close to when the pre-orders were going live, so I was ready to pounce. But being that this was the first retailer to go live with pre-orders in Canada, it was a predictable gong show and a very bad experience. I was forced to re-log in multiple times, and I could get as far as putting a system in my cart, but I couldn't check out fast enough before the items in my cart were out of stock. So even though I was prepared for it ahead of time, I was ready to go, I have a great internet connection, the system still let me down and I couldn't proceed with anything. Next, I would rank Amazon. They went about it a whole different way. When they went live with their pre-orders for the Switch, they made it so that you could request the opportunity to pre-order it. And while I appreciate that they had a system in place to try to combat the use of bots that are used to pre-order items at an ungodly rate, it was still frustrating to see that it was live only to be met with a request invite button. I guess I was never chosen to receive an invite because it never came. Next was one of the better experiences from Best Buy. It was not perfect by any stretch, but it was definitely better. When it first went live, it looked like I was out of luck. Again, met with the dreaded out of stock label. But I kept updating the page, even 30 to 60 minutes after the pre-orders were scheduled to have started. Eventually, the website would alert you that you were in the queue or the line, and that you were literally waiting for others to finish before you got your chance. This wasn't fast, but eventually I was selected and had the opportunity to see what was still available. Next was GameStop. Now, when the original Switch system launched here in Canada, we still had a retailer here named EB Games, and that is where I bought my Switch on day one after work at West Edmonton Mall. I was hoping to get the Switch 2 there as well, and they were great about setting up an email list and contacting customers when more information was available, like when pre-orders were going to resume. I talked to them on the phone the night before, and they very understandably couldn't tell me how many units had been allocated to their store, but they did tell me that I would need to be there in person to pre-order it, and it would require a pretty hefty deposit that was a little less than half the price of the console. The other great thing that I'll say about GameStop that I really appreciate is they are still updating their website with general availability for different locations. This is brilliant for consumers, and although I wish it was standard among retailers, it just isn't. So as of right now, I highly recommend GameStop as being your best shot at seeing what is available where. But still, make sure that you call the store ahead of time to confirm what is actually available. So in the end, I did get a Switch 2 pre-ordered. Time will tell if I'm happy with this decision or if I second guess it later. But regardless, I'm excited to finally try it out when it arrives on June 5th. How did your pre-order experience go? Did you get one, or are you still looking for one? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. More videos are coming.